Jaehyun said to Amara, I will make you ache for me so slowly, you'll beg to be mine in every lifetime. Their first meeting happens beneath an old oak tree, a quiet place where an African painter seeks inspiration and a Korean mafia heir hides from the chaos of his world. Art meets danger. Music meets silence. Their friendship grows through shared moments, exchanged sketches, and melodies hummed in the cold evening air. Then distance, betrayal, and fate test the promise they made under the oak tree. If our souls recognize each other, not even lifetimes will keep us apart. The sky looked bruised with soft purple clouds when Amara arrived at the hilltop. Evening was approaching, but golden sunlight still filtered through the branches of the old oak tree, painting warm patterns on the ground. This tree had become her refuge, a place where the world stopped spinning long enough for her to breathe, to imagine, to create. She laid out her sketchbook, pencils arranged neatly beside her. Her fingers were stained with traces of charcoal from earlier drawings, but she didn't mind. It made her feel alive. She was halfway through outlining the curve of a woman's face when she felt the air shift, like someone had stepped into her quiet bubble. Footsteps. Calm. Heavy. Controlled. She lifted her head. A man emerged from the shadows of the hill slope, dressed in a long black trench coat that shouldn't have looked so dramatic under the soft evening sun. Yet somehow it did. His posture was rigid, shoulders straight, chin slightly tilted downward as if he rarely let anyone read his emotions. But Amara's gaze locked instantly on his eyes. Sharp, dark, beautiful, and quietly haunted. He wasn't someone who blended into places. He stood out the way a whisper stands out in a silent room. He paused when he noticed her watching him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the wind moved, rustling through the dry grass. Finally, he said in a low, controlled voice, You draw. Not a question. An observation. Amara gave a gentle smile. Is it that obvious? His gaze flicked to the open sketchbook. You draw silence, he murmured. The comment caught her off guard. People usually said she drew beauty, or sadness, or life. But silence? She tilted her head. What does that mean to you? A strange vulnerability passed through his features, just for a second, before he came closer and sat on the grass beside her, leaving a respectful distance, yet close enough that she could feel the presence of him, warm and unsettling. He leaned his head back against the thick bark of the oak tree and closed his eyes. It means, he said softly, that your artwork feels like breathing, like the kind of peace that shouldn't exist in my world. She studied him quietly. The cut of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands stayed still, folded in his lap as though he was restraining something inside himself. You talk like someone carrying a lot, she said gently. His lips twitched, not quite a smile but close. And you talk like someone who sees too much, he replied. A comfortable silence stretched between them. The light softened around them as the sun lowered, casting warm shadows across his sharp features. He didn't speak again, but he didn't leave either. Instead, he watched her draw, not awkwardly, not distractedly, but with a level of focus that felt strangely intimate. After a while he asked, May I see? She turned the sketchbook toward him. He studied her work intently. When he reached the unfinished portrait of the woman under the tree, he paused. She looks free, he said. She's supposed to, Amara replied. He exhaled, a slow, thoughtful breath. Freedom, he murmured, is a luxury I've only ever watched from a distance. The heaviness in his tone made her chest tighten. Before she could respond, wind swept through the branches above them, sending leaves fluttering. He reached forward instinctively, and a single leaf landed in his hand. He stared at it, then looked at her again. You don't ask for my name, he noted quietly. I figured you'd tell me when you're ready, she answered simply. Something softened in his eyes. Something warm. Something she didn't understand yet. He lifted the fallen leaf and placed it gently on her sketchbook page. Draw this moment, he said. Why? She whispered. Because I want to remember what peace felt like, even if it's only for today. Amara froze. Something told her he wasn't exaggerating. This man carried storms in his silence. And yet, here he was, sitting with her, under a fading sky, as if this tiny pocket of time meant something. She started drawing again. He watched. And somewhere between the strokes of her pencil and the quiet rhythm of the wind, their worlds, two entirely different universes, brushed against each other. Not touching. Not fully connected. Just aware. And that alone changed everything. The next morning, Amara wasn't sure if she imagined him, the stranger with the quiet storm in his eyes. But when she arrived at the oak tree, he was already there. Back pressed against the trunk. Hands in his coat pockets. Eyes closed as if listening to something only he could hear. He opened his eyes the moment she stepped closer. You came back, he said. You came early, she replied. He didn't answer, but the corner of his mouth lifted just enough to warm the cold morning air. Amara sat down beside him, pulling out her sketchbook. She wanted to ask who he was, why he returned, what pulled him back to this hill, but something told her he would tell her in his own time. Instead, she asked, "Do you always appear and disappear like smoke?" His eyes softened, amused but also a little surprised that she was bold enough to tease him. "I don't disappear," he said carefully. I move around a lot." "A mysterious answer," she murmured. "A safe one," he corrected. She didn't push further. The sketchbook and the music. As she sketched, she noticed he was humming under his breath, the same melody as yesterday. Soft, lingering notes that carried emotion she couldn't name. "You're a musician?" she asked, glancing at him. He hesitated, the kind of pause filled with thoughts he wasn't ready to share. "I play," he said simply. "That's not an answer." Again that tiny almost smile. "It's the only one you get for now." So she kept drawing. And he kept humming. Their silences weren't awkward. They were full of presence, awareness, something unnamed brewing between them. When she finished sketching a new portrait, one inspired by his profile, he leaned closer. "May I see?" She handed him the sketchbook. The moment his eyes landed on the portrait, something in his expression changed. The softness in his gaze turned warmer, deeper, more fragile. "You draw people the way they wish they looked inside," he said. She laughed gently. "Is that your way of saying I made you look nicer?" "No," he replied. "It's my way of saying you see more than most people notice." A silence followed, but this one felt charged like the air before rain. "His name." She closed the sketchbook. "So, are you finally going to tell me your name?" He was quiet for a long moment, as if choosing to tell her might cost him something. "Jae-hyun." He finally said it softly, not like a fact but like a confession. "Jae-hyun," she repeated, letting the syllables roll off her tongue. The way his eyes sharpened told her he liked the sound of his name in her voice. "And you?" he asked. "Amara." He nodded once, slowly, as if the name settled somewhere deep inside him. "Beautiful," he murmured. She felt her breath catch. He wasn't flirting. He said it like an observation, a truth. Like her name mattered to him in a way he couldn't explain. The first hint of danger. A tall shadow fell over them. Amara turned, but Jae-hyun reacted faster. He straightened, shoulders tense, eyes instantly cold. A man in a dark suit stood at the top of the hill, scanning the area. Another stood behind him, speaking urgently into an earpiece. "They're looking for someone," Amara whispered. "No," Jae-hyun answered quietly. "They're looking for me." Her heart stilled. He stood up in one swift motion. The warmth he shared with her seconds earlier vanished, replaced by sharp edges and guarded instincts. "I have to go," he said. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. He didn't lie. He didn't hide. He just looked at her with that same storm hidden behind his eyes. "My life is complicated." "Complicated how?" she pressed gently. He swallowed, the tiniest movement but full of unspoken history. "I'll tell you someday." She didn't know why she believed him, but she did. He took a step back toward the slope. "Jae-hyun," she called before he could leave. He turned. "Will you come back?" she asked. He stared at her, really stared, like the answer mattered more than she realized. "I shouldn't," he said. "But will you?" A long silence. A long heartbeat. Finally, "Yes." Then he walked away, disappearing into the shadows as the suited men followed discreetly behind him. Amara sat back down under the oak tree, heart pounding. She didn't know who Jae-hyun really was. She didn't know what world he came from. But she knew this. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was the beginning of something her soul had recognized before her mind could name it. The next few weeks felt like a secret rhythm only two people knew how to dance to. Every day, sometimes morning, sometimes late afternoon, Jae-hyun returned to the oak tree. Always silent at first. Always watching her with those eyes that held too many stories. Always carrying a presence that made the world quiet around them. Amara never asked where he came from. He never told her why he left in a hurry several times. But somehow, none of that mattered. Under the oak tree they existed outside the rules of his reality. The day everything shifted. The sky that day was a shade of gold she'd never seen before. Soft, warm, melting into the horizon like honey over warm bread. Amara sat cross-legged, sketchbook open, but her hands were still. Her mind kept drifting to him. Would he show up today? He'd missed 2 days. Those same suited men had passed by yesterday, scanning the area as if guarding something invisible. Maybe guarding him. Maybe hunting him. A chill touched her skin. Then the leaves rustled and she felt it, his presence before she even saw him. He approached quietly, but there was tension in the way he walked, like a man carrying battles she couldn't see. "You're late," she said softly. You noticed. I always notice. He stopped in front of her, looking tired in a way she'd never seen before. Not physically, Jaehyun always held himself like someone raised in discipline, but emotionally. She stood up. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm. Tiny gesture. But he froze. As if he wasn't used to gentle touches. As if he wasn't used to being cared for. You okay? She whispered. His jaw tightened. I'm here. That's enough. And being here means? He looked away, then back at her. This time, the storm in his eyes wasn't trying to hide. It means I need this place, he murmured. And I need. He stopped himself. You need what? She pressed gently. He exhaled. Long, slow, painful. Peace, he whispered. And you, give me that. Her heart beat faster. But before she could say anything, he walked past her and sat at the base of the oak tree. This time, instead of sitting beside him, she sat closer. Their shoulders almost touched. The space between them felt fragile, charged. Stories they shared. He broke the silence unexpectedly. When I was a child, my father told me our family was built on iron. Weakness, he said, is a luxury of ordinary men. The words were hard, cold, spoken from a place of wounds still healing. Amara listened quietly, giving him room to share whatever he wanted. I grew up learning how to be invincible. His voice dropped. But I never learned how to be human. She turned to him. Maybe you're learning now. He met her gaze, and for the first time since she met him, he didn't look away. What about you? He asked. What did you grow up learning? She smiled softly. That art can save people. Did it save you? In many ways. He nodded, a faint, thoughtful gesture as if her words mattered more than she realized. The sun begins to set. As the sun dipped lower, painting their faces in soft orange light, Jaehyun shifted closer. Close enough for their arms to brush. Amara felt warmth radiate from him, steady, grounding, unexpectedly tender. Then he spoke again. This time, his voice barely above a whisper. If I ever disappear, know I didn't leave because I wanted to. Her breath stilled. Why would you disappear? She asked quietly. He closed his eyes. My world doesn't care about the things I want. A beat. And right now I want this. He opened his eyes, and for the first time she saw something raw, something vulnerable, something achingly real. I want you. She didn't speak. Her throat felt tight. Her pulse a drum. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. But the air held every unspoken feeling between them. The promise. He reached for her hand, slow, hesitant, as if asking permission. When she didn't pull away, he gently placed her palm over his heart. Do you hear that? He asked softly. His heartbeat. Strong. Steady. Too fast. Your world must be dangerous if this is what you're afraid to lose, she whispered. It is, he admitted, eyes shining with a truth he couldn't hide. Heavily dangerous. Then why come here? Why keep choosing this place? Choosing me? His fingers tightened slightly around her hand. Because this, he said, looking at her like she was the first piece of light he'd ever seen, is the only part of my life that feels real. The wind picked up, swirling golden leaves around them. Promise me something, he whispered. What? That if distance ever comes between us, you'll wait. Her chest ached. Only if you promise to find me again. He nodded once. Firm. Fiercely. I promise, he said. The sun finally slipped below the horizon, leaving only soft twilight around them. They sat there, hand in hand, letting the moment settle inside their souls like a seed meant to grow across lifetimes. Little did they know that this promise would soon be tested in ways neither of them were ready for. The next morning, Amara returned to the oak tree with a smile she couldn't hide. Yesterday had changed everything. The way Jaehyun held her hand. The way his heartbeat raced beneath her palm. The promise he whispered into the sunset. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful, fragile but real. She sat beneath the oak tree and opened her sketchbook, ready to draw him again. Ready to tease him about being poetic. Ready to ask why he always hummed the same song. But the hill was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps. No controlled breathing. No deep, steady presence. Just wind and silence. At first, she waited with excitement. Then with patience. Then with nerves chewing at her ribs. Minutes turned into hours. The sun climbed, then slowly began to fall. But Jaehyun never appeared. The first day without him. By evening, the cold settled over the hill. Amara wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the empty path he always walked from. Maybe something came up. Maybe he was running late. Maybe the danger he hinted at had finally reached him. Don't think that, she whispered to herself. But her heart didn't listen. She gathered her things slowly and walked home, glancing back over her shoulder every few seconds, hoping, praying, to see a tall figure in a black coat approaching with an apology on his lips. But the hill stayed empty. The second day. She returned early the next morning. Still no sign of him. The oak tree suddenly looked older, lonelier, as if it too felt the absence of the man who had sat beneath its branches every day. Amara opened her sketchbook, but the pencil wouldn't move. Her hands wouldn't obey her mind. Everything reminded her of him. The way the wind rustled the leaves. He always paused to listen. The way sunlight filtered through branches. He always stepped into the patches of light without even realizing. The way her heartbeat sped when shadows shifted, expecting to see him emerging from them. Her chest tightened painfully. Yesterday's warmth now felt like a cruel memory. The third day, the suited men returned. She arrived and froze. 2 men in suits stood near the oak tree, murmuring into earpieces. Another scanned the hill with intense focus. Her pulse quickened. These were the same men she saw weeks ago. The same ones Jae-hyun said were his world. She approached cautiously. One of them noticed her and stiffened. "Miss," he said politely but firmly, "this area is unsafe. Please leave." "I sit here every day," she replied. "I'm waiting for someone." The man exchanged a glance with his partner. A silent message passed between them, a warning, a secret, a truth. Then he said quietly, "Miss, he won't be coming today." Her stomach dropped. "Do you know him?" she asked, voice trembling. "We're not authorized to discuss anything," he answered. "But he's okay, right?" She tried to sound calm, but fear bled through her words. "He's alive." The man lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry, miss. Please go home." "Sorry. Sorry for what? Sorry he was gone? Sorry he was taken? Sorry she got pulled into something she didn't understand?" Amara stepped back, hands shaking. The men looked at her with a strange mix of pity and restraint. She felt cold all over. Jae-hyun once said, "If I ever disappear, remember I didn't leave willingly." Her breath caught. Was this what he meant? The silence that follows. Days passed. No Jae-hyun. No messages. No clues. Only silence. Heavy, suffocating, relentless. Amara tried to paint, but every canvas became a silhouette of him. She tried to sleep, but every dream replayed his voice. She tried to forget, but her heart refused to let go. She kept returning to the oak tree, every morning, every evening, even when rain soaked the ground, even when wind howled across the empty hill. She waited under the tree in the lonely quiet. She waited in the hope he would keep his promise. She waited because his absence felt too loud, too sharp, too painful to ignore. Rumors. One evening, while sitting in a cafe downtown, she overheard 2 Korean businessmen speaking softly in the booth behind her. "Did you hear about the Kang family situation?" "Yes." The eldest son was forced back after the attack in Busan. Apparently he vanished days before. They dragged him home. They say he's dangerous. And too important to disappear again. Amara's blood ran cold. Kang. The name hit her like a stone. Jae-hyun Kang? Her heart began to pound. A MAFIA family. Attacks. Forcing someone back. Someone who had vanished. Pieces clicked together painfully. This was why he disappeared. This was why the suited men followed him. This was why he said his world wasn't safe. And this was why he warned her about distance. He didn't break the promise. It was ripped away from him. The painting of him. That night, for the first time since he vanished, Amara picked up her paints. She let the brush move however her heart demanded. Hours passed. When she stepped back, she covered her mouth with trembling fingers. On the canvas was Jae-hyun, standing beneath the oak tree, half in light, half in shadow. Just like the man she remembered. Just like the man she feared she would never see again. Tears blurred her vision. "Come back," she whispered. "Please come back." The wound of distance. Distance wasn't just miles. Distance was uncertainty. Distance was fear. Distance was longing without answers. And for the first time, Amara understood the depth of his warning. Her world was safe, predictable, gentle. His was blood and power and shadows. But she wasn't ready to let the distance win. And somewhere, miles away, under a different sky, Jae-hyun was fighting battles she couldn't imagine. But the promise they made under the dying sunset? It lived in both of them, even if they were worlds apart. Winter crept into the city long before the calendar admitted it. Amara felt it in her bones, in the quiet ache beneath her ribs, in the way her fingers hovered over her brushes but refused to move. It had been months since Jae-hyun disappeared. The oak tree still stood where it always did, steady and loyal, but Amara felt like a ghost haunting it. She visited every day, sometimes just sitting in silence with her sketchbook open, waiting for a familiar shadow to appear. Her heart had carved a space only one man could fill. But the wind only brought memories. Until the night everything changed. The package. Amara returned home from a small art event, exhausted, lonely, trying not to admit how hollow success felt without him to share it with. A brown parcel sat at her door. No name, no address, no markings, just quietly waiting. Her chest tightened. She picked it up, hands trembling more than she wanted to admit. She locked the door behind her, leaned against it, and stared at the package resting on her lap. "Please," she whispered. "Please be him." She tore the tape open slowly, almost afraid the moment would disappear if she rushed. Inside was a small velvet pouch, a handwritten note, and a USB drive wrapped in black silk. Her breath caught. She unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was unmistakable. Clean strokes, firm pressure, sharp, elegant lines. Her eyes blurred before she even finished the first line. "Amara, I kept my promise. Even oceans cannot erase you. Jage." Her hand flew to her mouth as tears slipped through her fingers. It was him. He was alive. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't walked away. He was somewhere far, somewhere hidden, but still reaching for her. The music. She placed the USB drive into her laptop with shaking hands. For a moment nothing happened, then a single audio file appeared. Untitled. Simple. Mysterious. She clicked it. A soft piano note rang out. Lonely. Tender. Haunting. Then more followed, building like a heartbeat learning to breathe again. She froze. It was their melody. The one he hummed under the oak tree. The one she heard in the wind whenever she missed him. The one she remembered pulsing beneath his calm voice. Except this version was fuller. Deeper. Painted with the colors of longing, distance, and unspoken promises. She closed her eyes. The music carried her back to the first day he sat beside her. To the sunset where he confessed he wanted her. To the moment he warned her about disappearing. His world had torn him away from her. But his heart had found a way back. When the piano dipped into a soft, aching chord, she broke. Tears fell freely, dropping onto her palms, her desk, the keyboard. "Jaehyun," she whispered through the sobs she tried and failed to hold back. He wasn't here. Couldn't be. Maybe wouldn't be for a long time. But this song. This song was him touching her heart across continents, reminding her she wasn't forgotten. She listened to it 5 times. 10. 15. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. His music carried too much emotion, like he poured every unsaid word into the notes. What the letter said. She unfolded the letter again, rereading every line slowly. "You told me art can save people. Perhaps you didn't know it saved me. Saved the parts of me my world tried to kill. When I cannot speak, I write. When I cannot breathe, I play. And when I cannot return, I send this. So you will know I fought to keep our promise." Amara held the paper to her chest. Her entire body trembled, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of the connection that refused to die. He didn't tell her where he was. He didn't tell her why his world dragged him back. He didn't tell her how much danger he was in. But he sent this. And in his silence she heard more truth than most people hear in loud confessions. The decision that changed everything. For days she lived inside the song. It played while she cooked, while she worked, while she walked the city streets. Every note pressed into her heart like a promise rekindled. And slowly, she realized something. Waiting here wasn't enough. Because love like this, the kind born under an oak tree, nurtured by art and music, sealed by a sunset promise, wasn't meant to be passive. It demanded courage. It demanded action. It demanded her. One night, she stood in front of her painting of him, the one she created when grief drowned her, and touched the brushstrokes of his face. "I'm coming to find you," she whispered. The decision hit her like lightning. She wasn't going to let distance win. Not when he reached across oceans to remind her he still cared. Not when every heartbeat of his song called her name. She booked a flight to Seoul. No fear. No hesitation. Just the quiet certainty of someone who knew her soul had already chosen. The velvet pouch. Just before packing, she remembered the small velvet pouch inside the parcel. She opened it carefully. Inside was a necklace. Simple, silver, elegant, but unmistakably symbolic. A small pendant shaped like an oak leaf. Her breath caught. He remembered everything. Their tree. Their meeting. Their promise. She held it against her chest, and for the first time since he left, she smiled without pain. The journey begins. With her bag packed, her ticket confirmed, and her heart tied to the man who sent her music instead of words, Amara whispered the final vow into her empty apartment. "Jaehyun, I'm not letting distance break us. If you can send me your soul through a song, I can cross the ocean to bring you mine." She picked up the package, the letter, the USB, the necklace, and stepped out into a new chapter of their story. A chapter that would take her straight into the heart of his dangerous world. A world she wasn't prepared for, but a love she would risk everything to protect. Amara had flown across an ocean before, but never with her heart pounding as if it were racing ahead of her, eager to reach him before she did. Seoul's winter air hit her the moment she stepped out of the airport. Sure, cold, unforgiving, but she welcomed it. It reminded her of him, the man who carried storms beneath his calm exterior, a man she was finally close to again, or so she believed, the city that knows his name. Her first step was simple, find him, except it wasn't. Every person she asked stiffened at the mention of his name. Every taxi driver avoided eye contact. Every alley whispered danger. When she showed a sketch she had drawn of him, sharp jaw, dark eyes, the shadowed intensity only she had captured, people reacted in two ways, fear or silence. It didn't take long for her to understand why. Jaehyun wasn't just in a dangerous world. He ruled part of it. And the deeper she walked into the city, the more she saw it. The shadow of a man who lived between honor and brutality, between loyalty and blood, between love and the world that stole him away. The piano shop. On her third day of searching, she found a small music shop tucked between two massive buildings, a place that felt impossibly out of time. Warm light, soft melodies, and a grand piano placed in the center like a shrine. She stepped in cautiously. An elderly man polishing the keys paused and peered at her. You traveled very far, he said slowly, accent gentle but knowing, and you carry both hope and sorrow. Amara froze. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. The old man studied her as though he had been expecting her. You know him, she whispered. He nodded once. Her throat tightened. Please, I need to find him. The old man looked at the piano, then back at her. He comes here when he cannot breathe in his own world. When his soul grows heavy. Pause. He plays the melody of someone he misses. Her heart lurched. The melody. Their melody. What happened to him? A long sigh left the man's chest. He is a war child. With the people outside. But more with himself. Her fingers clenched. Can you take me to him? The man hesitated, then shook his head. No one can approach him now. Not even the brave. Not even the loyal. Amara wanted to scream, cry, beg. Instead, she asked the only question that mattered. Then how do I reach him? The old man pointed to the piano. Play for him. If your hearts are connected, he will come. The song that called the storm. Amara sat at the piano. Her hands trembled above the keys. Not out of fear, but from the overwhelming pressure of the moment. This was the piano Jaehyun touched. This was the place he escaped to. This was the instrument that carried their memories. She closed her eyes, thought of him. His voice, his warmth, his silence, his absence, and then she began to play, soft, slow, tender. The same notes he sent her through the USB, the same notes that kept her heart alive while he was gone. But she added something new, her pain, her longing, her promise. Her music filled the shop, spilled into the street, drifted up onto rooftops. Even the city noise seemed to quiet, listening. The old man watched her with widening eyes. And outside, the temperature shifted. The wind changed direction, and a black car rolled to a silent stop in front of the shop. Someone had heard her. Someone who moved like thunder when he was angry. Someone who recognized the melody before the second note even hit. The Mafia boss appears. The door swung open. Cold air rushed in. And then, he walked in. Jaehyun. But not the Jaehyun she remembered. This version was darker, sharper. Wearing a black coat dripping with Seoul's icy drizzle. 4 armed men followed behind him like shadows. His eyes scanned the room. Confusion, recognition, pain, relief, and then, raw feral anger. Not at her, but at the world for letting her be here. She stood from the piano slowly, breath trembling, eyes locked on his. Jaehyun, she whispered. He didn't speak. He just walked toward her. His steps were silent, predatory, almost trembling with emotion he was trying, and failing, to control. When he reached her, he gripped her shoulders, eyes blazing with disbelief. What are you doing here? His voice cracked, sharp and low. Do you have any idea what danger you've stepped into? Her eyes softened. I came for you. His jaw tightened. His fingers dug into her arms as if anchoring himself. Amara, I told you distance was the only thing that kept you safe. And I told you a promise doesn't break just because you disappear. His breath hitched. His composure shattered. He closed his eyes for a long moment, forehead nearly touching hers. You shouldn't have come, he whispered. But his voice trembled with the truth he couldn't hide. He was glad she did. Then he added, voice breaking with a warning he couldn't change. I will make you ache for me so slowly, you'll beg to be mine in every lifetime. But I can't protect you from what comes next. She lifted her hand, gently touching his cheek. You don't have to. Just let me stay. Silence. Heavy. Electric. Unbearably intimate. Then, he took her hand. Held it tightly. And for the first time since their oak tree days, he whispered her name like a prayer. Amara. The storm is not done with them. But then, the window shattered. A bullet tore through the air. His men pushed forward. Jaehyun grabbed her, pulling her into his chest, shielding her completely. The calm reunion evaporated into chaos. Gunfire. Shouts. Dark cars screeching outside. He held her so tightly she could barely breathe. Amara, he whispered against her hair, voice fierce and terrified. You stepped into my world. Now you can't leave. And as sirens echoed in the distance, as danger closed around them, as his arms locked around her, Amara realized she hadn't just found him. She had found the war he lived in, and it was now coming for her too. Gunfire echoed through the narrow Seoul street like thunder trapped between steel buildings. Jaehyun didn't hesitate. He lifted Amara into his arms, shielding her completely with his body as his men formed a tight circle around them. Move, he barked. His voice cut through the chaos, commanding, lethal, resolute. Amara felt the vibrations of each word through his chest. Her lungs burned against the intensity of his hold, but she clutched his coat, refusing to let go. He didn't set her down until they were shoved inside the black armored car. The doors slammed shut. Silence, except for his breathing, ragged and furious. He held her shoulders, eyes sweeping over her face. Did they hurt you? No, she whispered. His jaw tightened. He closed his eyes in raw relief, forehead dropping against hers for a brief, trembling second. Then he snapped up again, voice hoarse. Drive. Now. The car lurched forward. The safe house. They traveled for what felt like hours through winding, unfamiliar roads, industrial streets, silent hills, then a remote area where the city lights faded completely. When the car stopped, they entered a secluded house buried behind towering pines. Security cameras. Guards. Silence thick enough to choke on. Inside everything felt cold. Sterile. Like a place where emotions were forbidden. But Jaehyun never let go of her hand. Not once. He led her into a dimly lit room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a frozen lake. Only when the door shut behind them did he turn to her fully. His voice dropped, low and breaking. You shouldn't be here. Amara stepped closer. Then why did you come when I played our song? His breath caught. She had him. Completely. Utterly. The mask he wore crumbled. Because, he whispered, your heart reached mine. Even through this hell. The truth he never said. He stepped back, raking a hand through his dark hair. I didn't leave because I wanted to, he said. Amara's heart pounded. He continued, gaze fixed on the window as if ashamed of his own truth. My family's world pulled me in. My father's death put everything on my shoulders. Rivals came for my territory, my people, my life. He turned to her, eyes burning. If they knew about you, they would use you to destroy me. Amara swallowed hard. So you left to protect me. He nodded once. It was the only way I knew. A sharp breath. But the silence, it killed me. She stepped closer. Then why didn't you tell me any of this? Because I knew you'd follow me, he said softly, painfully. And I was right. His fear versus her heart. Amara reached for the oak leaf pendant around her neck. You gave me this for a reason. He stared at it, at her, like the weight of his emotions was physically crushing him. That pendant, his voice cracked. I had it made from the metal of my father's old ring. It is the only symbol of safety I can give you. When you wear it, every man loyal to me must protect you with their life. Her fingers tightened around the pendant. You wanted me safe even from afar. Yes, he whispered. Even when I couldn't be. She stepped closer until their chests brushed. And what about you, Jaehyun? Who protects you? He inhaled sharply like the question cut him open. You do, he said, barely audible. Your art. Your voice. Your presence in my memory. You're the only place my soul rests. The breaking point. He turned away abruptly, gripping the back of a chair as if grounding himself. You don't understand, he said. I am not the man you sat under that tree with. I kill to protect my people. I bleed so they don't. I have enemies who would burn this world to ashes just to make me suffer. He faced her. And you? You are everything soft in my life. Everything untouched. Everything pure. Amara's eyes glossed. But her voice was steady. And you think I came across an ocean to be protected instead of chosen? He froze. Every muscle in his body locked. Amara? She stepped closer. You taught me to be brave. To be strong. To fight for what matters. Her hand touched his chin, lifting his gaze to hers. Now fight for me. The confession he tried not to make. His breath trembled against her fingers. And then, All at once, he pulled her into him. His arms wrapped around her waist. His forehead pressed to her shoulder. His voice broke against her skin. I wanted you in every lifetime, but I was afraid you'd break in mine. She held his face between her palms. I'm not afraid of your world. I'm afraid of a life where you're not in mine. His eyes flickered shut, as if her words were salvation he didn't think he deserved. And when he finally looked at her again, she saw it. The surrender. The devotion. The lifetime promise shining in his gaze. He touched her cheek, slow and reverent. I will make you ache for me so slowly, he whispered, voice deep and trembling. You'll beg to be mine in every lifetime. Her breath caught. And if I already am, she whispered. Something shattered inside him. Restraint. Distance. Fear. All gone. The kiss that changed everything. Jaehyun kissed her. Not gently. Not hesitantly. But like a man starved. Like a man who'd waited too long. Like someone who finally had the right to breathe. Amara melted into him, fingers tangled in his hair. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer until no space remained between them. Their world, dangerous, dark, fragile, spun around them. The kiss deepened. Soft turned urgent. Urgent turned desperate. Desperate turned sacred. Everything unsaid was spoken right there in the silence between their lips. The final promise. When he finally pulled away, their breaths tangled. Jaehyun rested his forehead against hers. I cannot promise you peace, he whispered. But I can promise you loyalty. Fiercely. Completely. Across every lifetime. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. And I promise you strength. Not to run. Not to fear. Not to break. He brushed her tears away with his thumb. Then we walk this together. She nodded. And for the first time since his world swallowed him, he wasn't alone. Epilogue moment, the return to the oak tree. Weeks later, when it was finally safe, he took her back to the oak tree, the place where everything began. Winter had softened. Snow melted into early spring. They stood beneath the branches, the sky stretching endlessly above them. Jaehyun took her hands. Trees grow stronger after winter, he murmured. So do hearts, Amara replied. He smiled, a real one, rare and soft. And under the oak tree, he sealed their promise with a final whisper. In this life, and every life after, you're mine, and I am yours. The wind rustled the branches above, as if the tree itself remembered them. And so their story continued, not ending here, but becoming a legend whispered under leaves, across oceans, and through the lifetimes they promised to share.